Welcome to August's TBR. I had predicted in July that a lot of the books that I was reading would roll over into August, and that would make up the bulk of my August TBR, but I've been DNFing, did not finish, DNF, like a wild person. I'm actually not going to have any problems finishing that gigantic July TBR that I had. I have a very fun August TBR. The goal for August is to really focus on books that I actually own. So many of the books that I read in July came from the library, and that's great, but I really want to get rid of some of the books, not get rid of, but like check off some of the books that are on my TBR shelves and have been there for quite some time. So that's going to be the majority of my August TBR. It just feels so decadent to sit down with a physical book in the quiet and not do anything else but read. Not trying to fit it in here and there, just sitting still and reading. It feels decadent, right? So that's what I want to do with my last few weeks of summer break before I go back to work, which I'm actually really looking forward to going back to work after this summer, which means that yes, I am getting rested, and also yes, I am at a school that is for me. That's not always the case. So I'm super excited about all the things. Let's talk about August's TBR. So for the Read Harder Challenge, I'm going to read a book that I actually have on my shelf that has less than 500 Goodreads reviews. That book is Search of the Moon King's Daughter by Linda Holman. It was selected for the 2003 Books for the Teen Age by the New York Public Library, and it's received Mr. Christie's Book Award. I don't know what any of those things are, nor do I know why I own this, how I came to own this, or for how long I've owned this. But it's been a while. I don't actually know what the premise is, so let's look at the back of the book. It says, her mother had sold Tommy to a master sweep. Ah, so he's a sweeper. That makes sense. Okay. So her mother had sold Tommy to a master sweep, not as she tried to tell Emmeline for the boy's sake. It had been a way to have money for the drug, for the drams of opiate, so laudanum, maybe? That took her away from everything, the pain in her hand, the noise of the mill, the smell of the street, the poverty of her own spirit. And because of this need, Tommy would be a climbing boy, condemned to spend the next 5 years of his life forced into narrow flues in the high houses of London, sweeping and dusting the soot from the chimneys. 5 years if he lived that long. So I don't know what the girl is. I mean, sister, this sounds sad. But it was also a book that most people have not read and rated, apparently. So here we go. We're going on an adventure into Victorian London. Next, for my 12 in 12, I will be reading Honolulu by Alan Brennert. This is the book that was recommended to me by my sister. I've never read anything by this author, and I don't know anything about it except that I think it's a historical set in Hawaii. So thanks to my sister for recommending it. And if it's anything like the rest of the books I've read that have been recommended to me this year by my Facebook crew of friends, it's going to be a 4 or 5 star because they've all been excellent so far. So I'm looking forward to that. And then my book of the month choice is Catherine Center's Hello Stranger. This book is so beautiful on my shelf. I love that spine so much. It's so unique. I don't have other spines that look like this, and I just think it just brightens up my shelf. So it's absolutely beautiful. Also, I've already read it. I was lucky enough to get an arc of this on NetGalley, and so I read this. This was actually my very first Catherine Center book. I read it back in February, March time, and absolutely loved it. And as we know, this has sent me down some kind of Catherine Center backlist spiral. I've just been reading her books like a mad woman and loving every single one of them. I went ahead and picked this as my book of the month book because I knew I wanted to own it. I was excited to see that it was a book of the month choice, and I want to reread it. I only read it back in February or March, and I want to reread it. So I'm excited about this one. This is my book of the month pick, but I also did an add-on for Book of the Month, and I got Fiona Davis's The Spectacular. This is her newest one. And I don't know anything about it, and I'm not going to read the synopsis. I love Fiona Davis. Some of her stories hit me better than others, but I really enjoy her writing. I love how she always goes between different time periods in the city of New York, a storyline that draws the two stories together. I just really, really enjoy her writing. It's predictable as far as like the format and what is going to happen. Like, you always know what you're going to get with the Fiona Davis. But the story itself is atmospheric, and the setting is a character in and of itself, and the way that she unfolds the history is very engaging, and so I just really love her book. So I actually have no idea what this is about. None at all. And I'm just looking forward to reading it. I just realized I didn't tell you anything about Hello Stranger. Hello Stranger is about a portrait artist who gets a brain injury and can no longer distinguish facial features. She's got a form of, hopefully temporary, face blindness. And she also has some love stuff going on. Her big break as a portrait artist is supposed to be coming as well, but she can't paint a portrait for it because she can't see or distinguish facial features. So there's a lot going on in it. It is super fun, super funny, and very like heartwarming and emotional as well. So really, really great book. If you have not read it, I highly suggest that you do. If you have been living under a rock like me and have never read Catherine Center, I think it's the perfect place to start, actually, with Catherine Center. I'm going to read Pavilion in the Clouds. I'm going to be honest, this is totally a cover buy for me. I am going to listen to it on Audible. I know I just said I didn't want to get a bunch of new books, but this is by the author of the #1 ladies detective agency books, and I've really enjoyed some of those in the past. I really enjoyed the HBO TV series. And I've been meaning to read some other things by this author. This particular one is set in India before partition. And so I am curious. I am curious about it. I know that I enjoy this author's writing style. Will I enjoy this particular story? I don't know, but look at that cover. It's so beautiful. I would like to get a print of it and frame it. I just think it's just really pretty. I will be listening to this on Audible. And if I really need to, I can get it on Kindle. And if I really love it, then I'll buy it physically. But I'm just not sure yet, so I'm going to hold off. And my library doesn't have it, but I really want to read it. So that is happening. And then here's all my Shakespeare's back here. For my Shakespeare read, I will be reading Othello with my group of Shakespeareans. I don't own an individual copy of Othello, so I will be reading it out of my gigantic Royal Shakespeare Company bind up of all of Shakespeare. Now we get into a bunch of things that I will be reading from off of my shelves, and they are not in the same order as my spreadsheet, so I'm gonna be digging around a little bit. But first, I'm gonna read Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This has been talked about by everybody, and I think most people have read it, and I just never have. I've owned this. It's been on my shelf for 3 years, and I just think that it's finally time to pick it up. So I think everybody knows what this is about, except for me, maybe. So it says, devoted daughter, beloved sister, Sorsha is the light of the Seven Waters clan. Then suddenly her father and brothers are lost to her, bewitched by her new stepmother. To reclaim their lives, Sorsha leaves the only safe place she has ever known. When she is kidnapped by enemy forces and alone in a foreign land, it seems that there will be no way for Sorsha to break the spell. But true magic knows no boundaries, and Sorsha must choose, fulfill a vow, or gamble on a love that could heal her world or shatter it. So what I've heard people say about this is that it is really intensely emotional, a little bit slow, incredibly atmospheric, and everyone loves it. So I think that sounds great for an August afternoon type read. I have a copy of this on Audible, so I'm going to be listening to my Neville Shute for the year. Last year I said after reading The Pied Piper, I was like, I am not going to wait another year before I read a Neville Shute. Here we are. I said that last August. I love Neville Shute. I love Neville Shute. I love Neville Shute. And I just don't read enough of him. He's not that accessible in the United States. And so I have this book on Audible, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a listen. This is called Requiem for a Wren, or an alternate title is The Breaking Wave. So if you see those two titles, they are the same book, and I will be reading this one or listening to this one. I have tried to track down an affordable used copy of it. I know that I'm going to love it. I love all the Neville Shutes. I haven't found an affordable one that I like the cover of quite just yet. I would really like to get a copy of this one without paying $18 for it. But we'll see how that goes. So I've got this one on Audible, Requiem for a Wren, and it of course takes place in World War II or has a connection to World War II, like everything so far that I've read by Neville Shute. I'm sure there are books that don't, but so far everything I've read has some foot in World War II or the after effects of World War II. And this one is about a beloved housekeeper, I think, who mysteriously chooses suicide, and the family that she worked for trying to figure out why. I think that's what it's about. But in true Neville Shute fashion, I expect it to be about so much more than what it says on the tin. So, Neville Shute is amazing. If you haven't read Neville Shute, pick him up because he is amazing. The two that I've read previously are The Pied Piper and A Town Like Alice, both of which highly, highly, highly recommend. One of the best storytellers I've ever encountered. I think the reason I always want more of him, but I think the reason that I have actually read so little of him, even though I always want more, is that his stories are that satisfying. There's that much to think about even after it's done, but also they take a lot out of you because you are in that story with those people as it's happening, and they are like harrowing. They are. So it's a great experience. He's one of the best storytellers. One of the best storytellers. It's a book, one of those mini books that I was supposed to finish reading last summer, but never did. And this one's really sad because I was looking and waiting and like hovering around online waiting for the ability to pre-order this, and it took forever for it to come to the States. It's a Canadian book. It's a Canadian author. It's one of my favorite authors. This is by the author of Our Homesick Songs, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Discovered it 3 years ago thanks to Librarian versus Librarian and never looked back. This author doesn't put out books very often, but I knew that this was coming out and I kept waiting, and then it came out and I got it. I received it a couple of days before Joey Dog died and everything went off the rails. So I haven't read it yet. After all of that waiting and anticipating, I haven't read it yet. I've put it on a few TBRs since then and just haven't been able to pick it up. And now is the time. This is We Should Not Be Afraid of the Sky by Emma Hooper. A year in the anticipation. I've been anticipating this book for over a year, actually. I think I learned about it about 6 months before it was released and couldn't get a copy of it until after it had been released in Canada. Now it's readily available. You can go on Amazon and you can get it, but I had to wait, and then it took forever for it to be released in the States. Very excited to finally dive into this. Part of the reason why it's been hard for me to pick it up is because I know I've read the first 154 pages. So I know that this is an incredibly heartbreaking story. It's based on mythology, Roman mythology, but I will go ahead and read the back for you. It says, when you are a child, you are owned by your father. If you are a boy child, you grow up and own yourself. If you are a girl child, you grow up and are married and owned by your husband. Then you have babies and are owned by them And then when you die, at last, free, at last, your grave will say, above or excluding all else, daughter of, and wife of, and mother of. That's why. You understand? That's why I did what I did. Did what I did. So I know that this starts with the birth of many babies and the death of their mother and the attempted death, murder of all of those babies. It's a rough one. It's a rough book. I know that that she plays with time and space and reality. I know that there are ghosts or phantoms or spirits in this. It's lyrical and it's beautiful and it starts out heartbreaking. And knowing Emma Hooper and where she can go with heartbreak, I know that there will be a bit of redemption in it. It will be edifying, but it can also at the same time be absolutely devastating. And I just haven't been in a place to read it. And now I am. And I want to. And it's also like a really hot book. Like the setting, because she is such a wordsmith, the world really comes to life for me while I'm reading it, even though it is, or maybe because it is very poetic. It's very lyrical. And so I feel hot when the characters feel hot. And it's a very hot book. So I'll be reading that. Finally be picking up Stuart Turton's The Devil and the Dark Water. I read at the insistence of my sister. After much hemming and hawing and stopping and starting, I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle and absolutely loved it. And I know this is a different entity. I know this is a different beast, but I am excited to read another book by that same author. This one, I think everybody knows. Like I said, these are books that have been on my shelf, my TBR shelf, for quite some time. So I think everybody knows about this one, but I'll go ahead and share it anyway, because I'm really not sure what it's about. It says, A Murder on the High Seas, a detective duo, a demon who may or may not exist. It's 1634, and Samuel Pipes, the world's greatest detective, is being transported to Amsterdam to be executed for a crime he may or may not have committed. Traveling with him is his loyal bodyguard, Arndt Hayes, who is determined to prove his friend innocent. Among the other guests is Sarah Vessel, a noblewoman with a secret. But no sooner is their ship out to sea than devilry begins to blight the voyage. A strange symbol appears on the sail. A dead leper stalks the decks. Livestock dies in the night. And then the passengers hear a terrible noise whispering to them in the darkness, promising 3 unholy miracles, followed by a slaughter. I'm going to stop there. It has already pulled me in. They're stuck on a ship. All these things are happening. And knowing Stuart Turton, it could be anything. So I'm very excited to pick this one up. Next is a book that I have had on my to-read shelf, I think since 2015. Probably a little bit before that. I think I purchased this book when I lived in Florida. So that would have been many moons ago. And that is The Weird Sisters by Eleanor Brown. The Weird Sisters, of course, a reference to Macbeth, but this is a contemporary novel. And I do know a little bit about this one. This is about 3 sisters who come home, I think, because of the death of their mother, and they're dealing with their father, who is a professor. And I've just never been able to get into this book, but I've never let it go because I am intrigued by it. I think it is very much a literary fiction, and I think it's very much about this sister dynamic. And I'm in a place now where I am more interested in reading those kind of slower, deep dive into character type of books, and I think that's what this is. So I'm excited to give this a try, and I will say that it's not self-destructing or anything like that, but if I can't actually get into this book this time around, I probably will finally unhaul it, just because somebody else might really love it, and I've been hoarding it all these years, traveling with it all over the country, letting it take up space in my world, telling myself over and over again, hey, I should read that book, and not doing it. And if I really determine to do it this August and I really don't do it, I think I have to admit I've been lying to myself. So it's a now or never with this book. Another one that I've had on my shelf for a while, not as long as the other one, but this one, Delicious, by Ruth Reichl. I think that's how you say it. I know that she's a chef, I think, but she's also written, apparently, some fiction. So let's see what it says. Maybe it's a memoir? No, this is fiction. This is fiction. Through her best-selling memoirs, including Tender at the Bone and Comfort Me with Apples, Ruth Reichl has achieved a special place in readers' hearts. Now with this magical debut novel, she has created a sumptuous world that will enchant you. Billy Breslin has traveled far from her home in California to take a job at Delicious, New York's most iconic food magazine. At first, Billy feels like a fish out of water until she is welcomed by the magazine's colorful staff and seduced by the vibrant downtown food scene. I love a fish out of water story. I love a fish out of water story. I'm sure that I read that, and that is part of the reason why I picked up this book. Then an unexpected turn of events leads Billy to a miraculous discovery in a hidden room. I love hidden rooms. In a hidden room in the magazine's library, she finds a cache of letters written during World War II by Lulu Swan, a plucky 12-year-old, to the legendary chef James Beard. Oh my goodness, I understand why I purchased this book. Lulu's letters provide Billy with a richer understanding of history and inspire Billy to come to terms with her fears and her ability to open her heart to love. Why haven't I read this book? This has me written all over it. So I should have read this ages ago, and I'm excited to read that one now. This is another book that I have tried to read in the past and have not actually picked it up. I haven't owned it for very long, though. I think maybe 1 or 2 years. So this is The Forgotten Letters of Esther Durant by Katie Nunn, An Impossible Love, A Heartbreaking Secret. So this is going to be letters in World War II again, I think. Maybe not World War II. So it says, they were forgotten for 60 years, but the secrets within these letters still have the power to devastate. 1951, in the shadow of the Second World War, Esther Durant, a young mother, is committed to an isolated mental asylum by her husband. Run by a pioneering psychiatrist, the hospital is at first Esther's prison, but soon surprisingly becomes her refuge. And then in 2018, free-spirited marine scientist Rachel Parker embarks on a research posting on the Isle of Scilly off the Cornish coast. When a violent storm forces her to take shelter on a far-flung island, she discovers a collection of hidden love letters. Captivated by their passion and tenderness, Rachel is determined to track down the intended recipient, but she has no idea of the far-reaching consequences her decision will bring. Meanwhile, in London, Eve is helping her grandmother, a renowned mountaineer, write her memoirs. When she is contacted by Rachel, it sets in motion a chain of events that threaten to reveal secrets kept buried for more than 60 years. Again, why haven't I read this book? I know I'm going to love it. Why haven't I read this book? Thank you to past Jenna for buying books that you will love. No thank you to past Jenna for not reading them. Here is one that I have not had for a long time. I've had this for about a year, and I've wanted to read it several times, but it just never felt like the right time, and I'm tired of waiting for the right time. I see this spine on my shelf, and I want to reach for it every single time. So this is Ava Evergreen's Semi-Magical Witch, and this is a middle grade book, but I'm in the mood for it, and so I'm just gonna read it. I think this has Kiki's Delivery Service vibes. I know it's not directly related to Kiki, but I think that a lot of people have said that this is similar to. So I'm actually not going to read the back. I think that I enjoy middle grade more when I just kind of dive into them without knowing too much about them. I just really want to read it. That spine was calling to me, and so I'm going to put it on my TBR. We have Simone St. James, The Silence for the Dead. Now, Simone St. James, I was able to get this book for a very, very cheap price. And so I'm excited to have it. It is, in fact, it even says special value price. It is a re-release with these new covers that are closer to the covers of her more popular, more recent work. But Simone St. James has been writing haunted ghost stories for years and years, for decades. And this is one of her backlist titles. I have read some, like I read some of her Maddie Sinclair books, and they are so scary. Maybe not for you, but for me, they are very scary. They are ghost books. They are haunting books. They don't hold back on the scare factor. They are not thrillers. They are supernatural. And so I happily picked this up because it was so very inexpensive and I was hankering for a new Simone St. James. It's new to me, but I think it was first published in like 2008 or something like that. It's quite a backlist title. But it says, in 1919, Kitty Weeks, pretty resourceful and on the run, falsifies her background to obtain a nursing position at Portis House, a remote, tick my box, once magnificent estate turned hospital for soldiers left shell-shocked by the horrors of the Great War. Hiding the shame of their mental instability, the patients suffer from nervous attacks and tormenting dreams. But something more is going on at Portis House. Its plaster is crumbling, its plumbing makes eerie noises, and strange breaths of cold air waft through the empty rooms. And why do the patients share the same nightmare, one so horrific that they dare not speak of it? I'm going to stop reading the back there. I really enjoy Simone St. James's writing, both her back list, her back titles, and her more current things. And so I'm just really excited to give this a read. And then I also have The Plot, which what is for this particular list is one of the most recent books I've picked up. I got this at Half Price Books here in the city that I live, and picked this up when I was doing a week of fun bookish things with a group of students for an experiential learning week, and never read it. So I'm going to remedy that. I think this is also a thriller. I think that everybody knows the premise of this as well. From what I understand, it is about a professor who hears a student give the plot of the greatest story ever told, and that student dies, maybe, and the professor steals the plot, writes the book, and then I think the student comes back or something. I don't know. So I am going to read this one, and I hope that it is glorious. It probably won't be glorious, but I hope it like scratches that thriller itch. This is a book I've had on my shelves for a few years. This is The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. I'm not sure what this is about. My understanding, let's see. My understanding is that it is about an experiment. Like there's a group of people who are having dreams, they don't want to wake up from them. And so an experiment is done on them to try and see what they're dreaming about. Something like that. Let's see. Let's see what it actually says. It says, an ordinary town is transformed by a mysterious illness that triggers perpetual sleep in this mesmerizing novel. One night, in an isolated college town in the hills of Southern California, a first-year student stumbles into her dorm room, falls asleep, and doesn't wake up. She sleeps through the morning into the evening. Her roommate, May, cannot rouse her. Neither can the paramedics nor the perplexed doctors at the hospital. When a second girl falls asleep, and then a third, May finds herself thrust together with an eccentric classmate as panic takes hold of the college and spreads to the town. A young couple tries to protect their newborn baby as the once quiet streets descend into chaos. Two sisters turn to each other for comfort as their survivalist father prepares for disaster. Those affected by the illness, doctors discover, are displaying unusual levels of brain activity, higher than has ever been recorded before. They are dreaming heightened dreams. But of what? Okay, so not exactly what I thought it was, but a little bit what I thought it was. Sounds like another thriller, and I'm excited to read that one. And this is one I've tried to read a few times, but never have gotten to it. This is The Lion's Den by Catherine St. John. This, I think, is a murder mystery. Let's find out. I think it's a murder mystery. And I think that it just sounds and looks extremely August-ish. So I'm going to try and read it in the month of August. I did last summer put this on a TBR and didn't get to it. Not because I didn't want to. It's just one of those books that I didn't get to yet. So it says, Belle likes to think herself immune to the dizzying effects of fabulous wealth. But when her best friend Summer invites her on a glorious getaway to the Mediterranean aboard her billionaire boyfriend's yacht, the only sensible answer is yes. Belle hopes the trip will be a much-needed break from her stalled acting career and uniquely humiliating waitressing job. But once she's aboard the luxurious Lion's Den, it soon becomes clear this jet-setting holiday is not as advertised. So it's not quite what I thought it was at all. Belle's dream vacation quickly devolves into a nightmare as she and the handful of other girls Summer invited are treated more like prisoners than guests by their controlling host. And in one terrifying moment, Belle comes to see Summer for who she truly is, a vicious gold digger who will stop at nothing to get what she wants. Belle realizes she's going to have to keep her wits about her and her own big secret closely hidden if she wants to make it off the yacht alive. Interesting. Not at all what I thought it was. Not at all what I thought it was. And not at all maybe what it looks like on the cover, although maybe I've never looked that closely at the cover because that's a broken wine bottle there. Interesting. Interesting. So, sounds like a summer read, like the epitome of summer read. If you've read that one, let me know if you think that that is one that I'm gonna like. I have my doubts, but also am strangely drawn to it. So we'll see. I am also going to move forward with series again. I did not read series in the month of July because my TBR was so large that I just took the series off. But I'm going to move forward again with series in the month of July. So the next book in the Austen Family Chronicles is The Young Unicorns. This is the series about the Austen family by Madeleine L'Engle. The last one I read was my favorite in the series, and it's the one where the Austen family goes on vacation before moving to New York. It's the one where Vicky she meets her two love interests, and they're like night and day. And now the family is going to have moved to New York. They're settling in. So let's see what's happening. It says, the Austens are trying to settle into their new life in New York City, but their once close-knit family is pulling away from each other. Their father spends long hours working alone in his study. John is away at college. Rob is making friends with people in the neighborhood, newspaper vendors, dog walkers, even the local rabbi. Susie is blossoming into a vivacious young woman, and Vicky has become closer to Emily Gregory, a blind and brilliant young musician, than to her sister Susie. With the Austens going in different directions, they don't notice that something sinister is going on in their neighborhood, and it is centered around them. A mysterious genie appears before Rob and Emily. A stranger approaches Vicky in the park and calls her by name. Members of a local gang are following their father. The entire Austen family is in danger if they don't start telling each other what's going on. Someone just might get killed. This is the first book in the Austen Family Chronicles that deviates from reality, that brings in that sense of magical realism, of other possibilities, other dimensions, other realms. And it introduces that concept. And I will say that it's more magical realism than fantasy, or science fiction. But Madeleine L'Engle does start to introduce those concepts into these books at that point. Prior to this book, the first two books are entirely realistic fiction. Slice of life, realistic fiction. And then things change with this book. I'm going to listen to An Echo in the Bone. This is the next book in the Outlander series. I'm going to read the final book in the Arcana series by Cressley Cole. That is From the Grave. This is the one that we have been waiting for. for years, and it is finally here. I've so enjoyed revisiting these books, and they are very, very YA, and I don't read, I was just telling my sister, I don't really read YA very often unless I know it's a YA that I already love. They are very YA, but for whatever reason, I've got nostalgia, I've got feelings of fondness for these characters, and I am so curious as to Cressley Cole's vision for the ending of this series. I can't imagine it. I can't predict it. So I am excited to finally have that. I'm going to start a few new series as well. I'm going to start the Wildwood series. I own all 3 of these. I've read about half of this one, but I've never finished it. It is huge, and I just kind of went other ways and never came back to it. I think I had it as a library book and I had to return it, and now I own them. So I'm going to go ahead. They're so beautiful. I love them all. In fact, the other 2 are sitting right there behind me. But I'm going to read these this year, complete this series. There are 3 of them. And the first one is Wildwood by Colin Malloy and Carson Ellis. Colin Malloy is part of one of my favorite music groups, the Decemberists. They're from the Pacific Northwest. I've seen them in concert several times, and their music speaks to my heart. So I really am excited to read his narrative voice and see what he has to offer middle grade wise. Another series that I'm gonna start, I own all 3 of these. I hunted them down on Abe Books a year ago, and so I'm gonna read these. There are 3 of them, and they are the Memoirs of MMK, who wrote, I have it down here, you can't see it, The Far Pavilions, and the one, Shadow of Night? Something like that. The one that has the main character, her name is Winter. And she writes a lot about the British Raj and India before and during partition. She also has a series of mystery novels set, I think, in Egypt and in the same time period. But she also wrote these really great memoirs. And I do remember when I was in college, or maybe a senior in high school, I checked one out. I don't remember which one, but I checked one out from the library where I lived at the time, and started reading it, but didn't complete reading it, I don't think. And I know that I really, really, really enjoyed it. I don't remember which one it was, though. I don't know if I read some of The Sun in the Morning, or the one about the afternoon, or the one about the evening. They're all called something, like as her life progresses, they have those indicators. This one is about her childhood, and I am really looking forward to reading this. I love her writing. I love a good memoir. This is not on audio, so I will just be reading it, and it's going to be the perfect thing to just kind of read very slowly. I'm starting it now because it feels like a summer book, but I want to finish the series this year, but I won't mind if this book takes me 2 months to read and the next one takes me 2 months to read. I want to savor. That's what I want. I want to savor these memoirs. I am also going to start this. There are 3 books in this series as well, and these are memoirs written and printed, I think, in the 1930s, but they're by a woman who lived in the Victorian period. And I'm going to read the first of those 3. This is A London Child of the 1870s by M.V. Hughes. This is a memoir. This is a picture of M.V. Hughes, so very Victorian. But I believe she wrote these in the 1930s, so they're not really Victorian, but they're bio-Victorian, if that makes sense. So that's it for series. I have decided to put a pause on the Seven Sisters series. I don't think it's the right time for me. I'm enjoying them, but not loving them, and I did not feel excited to put the next book on this stack. So I'm just going to put it on pause. I might come back to them at some point, but probably not this year. They will go the way of the Poldark series, which I also started this year and decided to just put on pause indefinitely. I will pick them up when I feel like picking them up, if I feel like picking them up, but they weren't driving me to pick them up. I was not excited to find out what happened next in them. So I'm just gonna put it on hold. There's nothing wrong with the series itself. There's nothing wrong with me as a reader. Just not the right time maybe, or maybe just not the right book. I also have 3 nonfictions that I would like to read. I'm gonna read True Crime Addict. Notice that I say I'm going to read True Crime Addict. I've had this for several years. I put it on several TBRs. Haven't gotten to it. Last year, I think I put it on my summer TBR, but I also put it on my nonfiction November TBR, and I also put it on my Bloomin' Readathon TBR last year. And I just did not get to it, and so I'm going to get to it. This is the story of I think this is the memoir of a true crime podcaster, I think. It says, when an 11-year-old James Renner fell in love with Amy Mihaljevic, I remember always having a hard time saying that name, the missing girl seen on posters all over his neighborhood, it was the beginning of a lifelong obsession with true crime. That obsession led James to a successful career as an investigative journalist. It also gave him PTSD. In 2011, James began researching the strange appearance of Maura Murray, a UMass student who went missing after wrecking her car in rural New Hampshire in 2004. Over the course of this investigation, he uncovers numerous important and shocking new clues about what may have happened to Maura, but also finds himself in increasingly dangerous situations with little regard for his own well-being. As his quest to find Maura deepens, the case starts taking a toll in his personal life, which begins to spiral out of control. The result is an absorbing dual investigation of a complicated case that has eluded authorities for more than a decade and a journalist's own complicated true crime addiction. So I'm going to read that book. And then I also have these 2. This came to me as an ARC, and it's beautiful. I think it releases in August, so I'm a little late to the game, but I only just received it. So it's so beautiful. It's Wake Up to Wonder by Karen Wright Marsh. 22 invitations to amazement in the everyday. And so it looks like maybe these are little daily devotionals by people. I see Thomas Merton, I see Hildegard von Bingen, I see Marjorie Kemp, I see Wangari Maathai, I see Caedmon, Amanda Berry Smith, I don't know that person yet, Augustine, Fannie Lou Hamer. So it looks like there are 21 people who they take, looks like they give maybe a biography, a little snapshot of their life. And then it looks like there's an object lesson. And then it looks like there are suggestions for how to apply this information to your own life. And some of those things are little activities like coloring pages, and some of them are activities like songs to listen to, body language to try, invitations to draw, things to do while on a walk, just all sorts of things. So it looks like it is some kind of devotional. And I am into devotionals, so I will look into this. I don't know that I'll read it cover to cover in this month, but I will definitely be making this a priority. It is, again, so beautiful. This is just the arc. Look at that. That is so beautiful. And then I have this one, which I bought accidentally. So, you know how when you're a booktuber and you're watching other people's hauls, and sometimes you don't want to forget a book, so you add it to your wish list, or maybe you accidentally pre-order it, and then it arrives at your door and surprises you. And when I got this, I was like, I did not order this. I did not order this. Why is this being sent to me? I did not order this. I was definitely charged for it, and I did not order it. And then I realized I had pre-ordered it. And then I realized that I had never meant to pre-order it. But now I own it. It is mine, and I will be reading it, and it better be good. It better be good. That is all I have to say. It's obviously a book that I was interested in, that I am interested in. I just don't think I would have purchased this book, and that is all I will say. But now I own it. So here we go. This is 4 French holidays. And what this is 4 distinct voices. The voices of Daphne du Maurier, Stella Gibbons, Rumer Godin, and Marjorie Sharp. And they're novels inspired by France. So I don't know if it's Anne Hall. I think she is writing about them writing about these places in France. And it is a beautiful book, okay? It is full color, thick pages, smells like an expensive book because this is an expensive book. And I am very happy to welcome it to my shelves. And it's a gift I gave myself. This year I'm trying to only buy used books for the most part, or extremely discounted books. And by surprise, it's like a coffee table book, but it's just normal book size. It's very pretty. I hope that it contains incredible amounts of insight and glory. I hope I read it and think, I'm so thankful. I have my doubts and my expectations are extremely high. So I don't know how it will go. Have you ever done that? Have you ever accidentally purchased a book? I hope it's my favorite read of the year. We'll see how it goes. That's it. Those are the books that I am going to prioritize reading in the month of August. Now, I do go back to work at the end of the month of August, but it's not much teaching time in August. It's mostly set up your classroom, get back into the swing of things, go to meetings, sorts of things. I have been on the side doing a lot of lesson prepping and planning and working ahead and getting a lot of things done so that hopefully I have a pretty smooth year ahead of me teaching-wise, and hopefully I have a lot of space in my life for reading next year, school year. You know, when you're a teacher, the year starts and ends twice. You have the 2023 to 2024 year, and you have the 2023 year. So I'm about to start in the month of August, my 2023-2024 school year. And I think I'm setting myself up this summer for a very smooth year. Knock on wood. And I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm excited to go back to work. I'm excited that I still have weeks off, but I'm also excited to go back to work. I will be taking a lot of really great stories into the upcoming year with me as well. I have been reading so many wonderful books this year. It's been my best reading year yet. So many wonderful books. And when I say yet, I mean like in my life. And those stories are working their way into the way that I approach writing with my students in the upcoming year. They're working their way into the way that I approach talking about books with my students in the upcoming year. So all of this work that I do, all of this joy that I have in my web life relating to books is really grounding my real life, really. So I'm excited to continue to work on that as we get closer and closer to the beginning of the new school year. And I'm excited that I'm excited about the beginning of the new school year. And I am excited that I have this gigantic stack of amazing stories to read or discard in the meantime. So let me know, have you read any of these books? Have you ever accidentally purchased a book that you did not mean to purchase? Is there anything on this stack that you think that I should prioritize and move to the top of the list? What's your favorite? Most of these are backlist titles, so it's very possible that you have already read them. Give me your insights. Now, if you hated it, don't give me too much insight, but you can tell me that. You can tell me you didn't like it. If you loved it, tell me why. You can even give me spoilers. If there's spoilers, I'll read around them. Anyway, I think that I am probably going to start, now that I've read these synopses, I think I'm actually probably going to start with this one. And no one is more surprised than me. I think this is where I'm going to start. Very excited to read these books. And I will talk to you later. Let's go read.